So we can make a new file, practice.html. We'll open that file up. Okay, nothing on the page. We have no HTML. So let's go to here. And you guys will have seen most of this, but we have a couple of different tags. Most of them need an opening and closing tag, so that's everything like our heading tag. We have our H1s, welcome to the beach, H2, H3, and if we now go to visit our HTML page, we'll see all of these shown up on the screen. And the things about our H1 tags and our H2 tags, these are really just pre-styled elements. So there's nothing too special about these. These have font size and font weight already given to you. So we can add a couple more here, p tags. And yeah, so since you guys have seen most of these, we're going to move on to inline styling. So if we want to add style to one of these elements, we can add the style right to the tag. So we can add a style attribute, which looks like this, style equals, and then what that takes in is a property pointing to a value. And so one that I know off the top of my head, color, we can add a color to this H1. Let's say we want orange, right? So we go back to our HTML, refresh, orange. So we can add sort of whatever we want to these. But as you can see, if we start adding style to each of these tags, this will get super messy. It's not really sustainable if you have an entire project and you're adding style to each specific tag. So what we can do here, take this out for a sec, if you do HTML tab, we get an HTML file structure laid out for us. So this whole thing encapsulates the HTML. The head will have all of the metadata about our HTML file, and the body will house everything such as these tags. So we can go ahead and paste this in here. So instead of having the inline styling for each tag, we can use something called an internal style sheet. And what that is, we add this style tag inside the head of our HTML file here. So we add style, and then we can go ahead and add a tag with the declaration block, and then we'll have the property pointing to the property value. And so what we have here, so let's say we want to style this H1, we can select the H1 and paste this style in there. We'll have color pointing to orange, and we can take this out of the inline. And what we should see here when we refresh, the style's still there. So we can style a couple of things here. Let's say we want the H2 to have a color blue. I was just gonna type blue. Blue, nice. Go Mets. Go Knicks. So we can style whatever we want here. Let's say we had another H2. Welcome, welcome. What do you guys think will happen to the colors on the page? Given that we have the H1 styled orange, also blue, yes. So now all of the H2s are going to be blue. So let's say we just want this first H2 to have a color on it, and we want this H1 to also be blue. We can do something and add a class to both of these. And I know you guys have also seen the classes and IDs, but the main difference between the two, if you have multiple elements that you want to be styled a certain way, you can add a class. So that's like sort of the reusable feature. We can add the class to however many things we want. And if you just want one element styled a certain way, we'll add an ID to it. And the ID should be unique across your entire project. So we can give this H1 a class of orange text. Give this to the H2. And then this other H2, we want an ID of blue text. So instead of these selectors, we'll grab the class first. And how do we denote class style? Nice. Orange text. And the property color. And the value is going to be orange. And so for an ID, how do we style that? Hash. As Charlie likes to say, octothorpe. So we have octothorpe blue text. We can go in and say color blue.
Do you have to do the orange text, or you can just do the text and then just call the class?
Sorry?
Do you have to do the orange text, or can you just do the text, class text, and then you're already writing color inside orange? You have to call orange text.
So up here, you mean?
Yeah.
So that's just what I named the specific class. I can call the class whatever I want. I can say like class starfish. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Starfish. I can give both of these class of starfish and replace that. Nice. Cool. So the HTML elements will be sort of like the least specific tag that you can grab. Classes are more specific, and IDs are the most specific. So if you have a class and you say color orange, and then you add an ID, and you also say color blue, the ID will overwrite the class.
But if you have an ID and you have a string in the tag saying like color blue, and your ID, you have ID the same color, right?
So if we have, for this H1 class of starfish, an ID of, what do you want to call it? Cat. Catfish. So we can call this ID, so octothorpe catfish, and we can say color, what color do you want? Red. So this ID should overwrite, if you have the same
What if you type like, what's the color, style,
within the header?
yeah, what if you say style, color,
Inline.
inline, yes, inline is even more specific than an ID. So right now this ID will overwrite the class, and if you have inline, you say style. This is a nice color, thistle. Even more specific. Cool. And then if we also want to select multiple elements, let's say we want all of the H3s and all of the H4s, we can chain elements with a comma, and that will grab all of them. So we can say color yellow, and those will grab, it's a little hard to see, but those will grab all of the elements with those tag names. Cool. So if we continue to add style in the head tag of our HTML page, this is also pretty unsustainable for a project the size that you guys will be working with. So we can do something even better, and we can link to an external style sheet. So we can have our separate CSS file and style our HTML within that. So let's go ahead and add a new file. Whoops. practice.css. So now let's say we go into this file and we grab all of these classes and IDs and paste it into our practice.css. What do you guys think will happen? I forgot to link it. So if we go to Chrome, we still have the thistle wonderful color because we used inline styling for that. But in order to link these two files, we need to add a link in the top. So this link tag, this is telling our HTML what the style sheet is relative, or what this link is relative to the HTML file, and then we need to give it a path. So this is within the same, this is on the same level as the CSS file, and we called it practice.css. And now we should see all the styles come up in the external style sheet. And this is what you guys will be using mostly for your projects and beyond. I think it's good to be able to read inline styling and internal style sheets just in case you see it on any docs that you come across, or you just want to test things out right in your HTML file, but this is something that you'll use more often, the external style sheet. Cool. Has anyone heard of the box model before?
Me? Yes. But tell us more.
Does anyone know what the 4 elements of the box model are?
Content, padding, order,
Nice. Cool. So Chrome is super useful for exploring this box model. We can open up the elements page and we can hover over some things here. But if we take a look at, can you guys see this okay? If we take a look here, this is the box model, right? So right now I'm hovering over this first H1. And we can see here, so the way this works, the content is this inner box, padding is right outside of that, border is right outside of that, and margin is the space between the border and any other elements on the page. So the content is the actual content of the H1. And so when we hover over this, we see beach highlighted all the way across the page. If we hover over padding, there's nothing there because we didn't add padding to our H1, same with border. So this is pretty cool. I don't know how many of you guys have explored using the console for your CSS, but we can click into this element.style on the top right, and we can kind of explore here and add certain styles to our page. So if we want a border, we can say border 20 pixels, we want it dotted, and we want orange. And so this is cool. We can add things and remove things in the console. And then we'll also add some padding to this. So we'll say 20 pixels and some margin also, 30 pixels. Cool, so now when we go back down to this box model, we see the content highlighted. The padding is the space between the content and the border. The border is kind of the most straightforward. You guys all know what a border is. And then the margin is the space outside of the border between itself and any other elements. A couple other pro tips here. You can click on these numbers and you can change the value right there. You can click on the border number and you can scroll to make it larger or smaller. And then also, just as an aside, you can click on these color squares and you can pick colors from here. We can drag these over here, and then this second bar is for opacity. Cool. And you can also click Shift and change the layout of the color, the format. So RGB, hex colors, cool. Does anyone have any questions on the box model? What's up?
Do you have a resource you go to find all the different things, like dotted, for example?
Yes. Well, something cool you can do here, you can, let's say we have border 20 pixels, border style. We can, border style. You can kind of loop through these and see what they look like as you go through. Outset, ridge, solid. So you can kind of look through this way. Cool. So now that we kind of went through, what's up?
So, very quickly, not on the box model, but underneath with the color, class, and ID, catfish, and starfish, why are the colors struck through?
Over here,
Down,
this?
Under catfish and starfish, there's a strike through on colors.
So this is for the H1, right? This is what we're hovering over. And these are crossed out. So before, when we added these classes and IDs to that one element, the inline styling overwrote those colors from before. So we see anything lower down. So up top, this element.style, that's the styling for this element, and then anything below, this is what it inherits from other styles from other elements. Cool. So now that we went through the basics of our CSS and our box model, let's go back to the project that we're going to build together. So we have this beach, right? And this is the idea. This is what we want it to look like. You and your partner decide you want these images floated all the way across on your page, one on top of the other. So let's go into our CSS file. We can comment everything out here and build this together. So if we go back, we see all of these images just everywhere on the page. It's mayhem, and it's chaos, honestly. So something we can do here, we have a couple of options. Actually, we have unlimited options. You can you can design the CSS however you want it. I find two tools extremely useful that I like to use, one being a CSS grid and the other being a flexbox. So the difference between those, a grid, you can specify a certain number of columns and rows, and you can have all of your content held within those boxes. So that's going to be like any table that you guys have made previously. Just looks like a regular table. The flexbox, on the other hand, you have a container, and you tell that container to display flex. And so what that means, everything is housed within a container, and then you can tell the content inside of it whether you want it to align in a row or in a column. So a grid, you have columns and rows. Flexbox, you have one or the other. What's up?
This is reference to placement of where things go on the page?
So it can be used for that. It doesn't have to be. So a grid, yeah, if you have like a 4x4 grid and you want content inside of each of those boxes, you can have like images inside of those.
How particular can you get placing an object or something exactly where you want it on the page so that it's dynamic, and when resize the window, set window resolution, what's the best solution for that?
So if you're asking about like responsive CSS, if you're like looking on a phone versus on a desktop, that's a whole.
Sorry to interrupt, not maybe desktop, but like if I took this window and you made it smaller.
Like this.
Right, yeah, or you know, move it up on a larger monitor, or change the resolution.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not mobile, like whatever website.
Right. So I think you'll have to play around with that. The Flexbox, the idea of it, so you'll have images or whatever you have inside of the Flexbox, they should like align in response to each other. Like you can have one position to the left, center, right. So that should take care of that. But in terms of like responsiveness to other,
That requires you to style differently for depending on what like size browser you're in. So whether you're on a phone, whether you're on a tablet, whether you're on like a computer, like all of those require different styling, and it can become very complicated.
I think you'll see that when Dana builds it, it is in fact very responsive. If you want to specify the responsiveness at a particular size, what we're looking for is media queries. We won't be covering media queries, it's a more advanced topic, and possibly in a part 2, maybe later in the future.
Cool. So let's take a look at what we have so far. In our HTML, we have within this body, the first element is this button. And we're not really going to worry about this button. It's fine if it's floating above our images. We have this lovely border ID. And so that style I left in there. And then within that, we have a beach container. And so the beach container is what we want to house all of the rest of these images. And so what we can do for the beach container is say, like, have this display flex, and then have everything within that align itself in a column. So what that will do, have one box and have everything else align vertically. So we can take this beach container, go into our CSS, and it's an ID. We're going to grab that octothorpe. We're going to say display flex, and our flex direction column. So you'll see when we refresh, not much happens. These are all already displayed in a column. So now we have to do some more to get this to look how we want it to. We can say for our Flexbox, we can say like the height, have it be 100% of the border that it's within. So we can say height 100%. Cool. So the next thing we have within this beach container, we have 4 conveniently placed wrappers. We can tell these wrappers that we want them to be 25% height-wise of the larger container. So each of these will take up 1/4 of the page, and it'll align accordingly. So we can say this class of wrapper, we can say height 100%, 25%. So now if we go back and refresh, okay, it's something. We kind of have 4 evenly spaced out sections. We can hover over them to make sure. So each wrapper is now taking up 1/4 of the page. So what now? What else do we want to do with these images?
Stretch them.
Stretch them.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can look here. Each of our images have a class of flex photo. So in order to stretch them, we want to say, we want the width to be 100% of the container. That will stretch them across the page. So we grab this class flex photo. We can say width 100%.
Oh, for both.
Cool. So now we have the width taken care of. What about the height?
No.
Oh, let's fix the height.
Let's fix the height. The height, we also want it to be 100% of the container that it's in.
What else you call auto?
Auto? Sorry?
Yeah, there's a command for auto.
Want to try it? So in this case, we're going to just specify 100% of the container that it's in. Cool. So now we have the sky, the ocean, and the sand, but the seagulls are like kind of everywhere on the page. So what we can do for the seagulls, and again, there are endless amount of options for this. We don't have to use a flexbox again. It's the tool that I personally like, but you guys can explore with however you want to position these on the page. I was thinking we can make another flexbox around the seagulls and align them in a row this time so that the images are one next to the other. So if we go back to this HTML, we see this seagull container. I originally had it called pigeon container, but that just like sounds like, that's kind of gross. So we have this seagull container. This is an ID. And so what we do to make a flexbox, we take the container and we specify that we want this display to be flex. So we'll go back to the CSS, grab this ID. And this is an ID because we only have one seagull container on the page. And this is specific to the seagulls. So we're going to say display flex. Bless you. And this flex direction is going to be row.
Wow.
Wow. Cool. So now that we have all of these images laid how we want them on the page, the last thing that's bothering me, I don't know if it's bothering you guys, this like pretty ugly, oh, well, that too, but this pretty ugly button. It's just like your standard HTML button. I heard that Semantic has great buttons that we can take the style from. So we have a couple of CSS frameworks, and what these are just pre-written CSS that we can take advantage of and use some of these styles in our projects. Again, you can choose from whatever CSS framework you like. I've used Semantic before. I like the way their style looks, so that's what I use mostly. So we're going to visit this website and figure out how to use it together. So we're going to go to Semantic UI. Wow. First thing. So, welcome to Semantic. We should probably look at getting started. These are the docs. They're pretty helpful. Right away, I see this simpler setup. That sounds good to me. This says, if you just need the files, you can download them as a zip from GitHub. Great. So we're going to do that. Download the zip file. Keep scrolling down, and you see this include in your HTML. So what this is here, we have this link tag, similar to the link that we used to connect to our external style sheet. So we can grab this, put this in our head tag up here. And this is fine. You can have two style sheets because it's cascading all of these styles here. Okay, cool. So let's refresh here. Open up our console. This says error, file not found. So what we're telling our link to do, it's saying look for this style sheet and look relative to where you are in this HTML file. look for a folder called semantic, and then within that, a folder called dist, and then within that, a file called semantic.min.css. And right now, we don't have any of that, so it's like, where do I find this? So let's make it. Let's make a new folder, semantic. Make a new folder within that. And then I'm assuming that this semantic.min.css is something that we downloaded from the website. So we'll go to our Finder here. Wonderful. So we have this. And I'm going to drag this file into here. And so now we have this semantic file within this file structure that we're telling it to look into. And I'm just going to go into here. This looks pretty scary, but this is the minified version of their CSS file. So this is just all of the pre-written code that we can take advantage of. So if we search here like for a button, there's a ton of places where they define what a button is. I'm pretty sure Semantic has like a Facebook button, and like you can find these styles within here. This is just the minified version of the CSS. So let's go back to Semantic. Over here. And so we want to grab a style for the button on the top of the page. So we can scroll down here to all of these buttons, and we can pick from any of these that we want. So like this first standard button, we view the source code, and all this has is a class of UI button. Let's grab that. So we go back to our HTML. Inside of our button up here, add this class of UI button. And now if we go refresh this page, wow. Awesome. And so we can add more classes to this UI button. If we keep scrolling down, we can see all these colored buttons. Loading button. We can change the size. So someone pick a color. What's up?
When you have multiple style sheets, like I assume that style sheet is static for like headers as well. So how does that work when you have two style sheets that style the same element?
So it can essentially pull, like the styles can pull from either of them, but since the only style that we have from our semantic.min.css right now is the class of UI button, that's the only style that it's going to pull from semantic as of now.
I mean, but does it come with like an H1 style by default or something like that? Like would that?
So we'll have to add classes if we want to use the style from semantic.
Okay.
And specify how we want to style those H1s, let's say. So someone yelled out a color, but I missed that. Teal. I like teal. So this is just saying add the class of UI teal button, and we already have UI button. Let's throw a teal in there. Now we have a teal button. Okay, cool. There's a lot we can do with semantic. I just wanted to show you guys a little sneak preview of how you can use it. Does anyone have any questions about semantic or any of the other CSS that we went over? What's up?
Why are your birds still small when you put like
If they migrate south?
Yeah.
So I added, when you click on the button, it's going to change the source for the image. And so I think those images are smaller, just the ones I pulled from Google, but we can style those and make them the same size as.
But I thought like the style you did before was just for like everything in that container.
So when you click on it should. Let me look at that and I'll get back to you. Anything else? Any other questions? All right, thank you.